Alright, y'all. Podcast episode does not wish to slander, libel, or defame or cause anybody harm as it relates to this video. What we're going to talk about today, we're still coming from the Franks hearing of the United States of America versus Dion Gatlin. That's the wrong one. This is public information. This is the Franks hearing, dated January 9th, 2017. I'm on page 87 of 192. Tammy Cowins receives an award for $80,750. And what's interesting about this reward, and Keith Cromer is on the stand, he's being cross-examined by Humphrey. Still, to put in an award for an informant, you have to use a form DEA 499. Now, what Keith Cromer is trying to do at this point, as he explains it on the stand on the oath, is he's trying to introduce Cuffy to a Mexican source of supply that is being handled by CS2. Gentleman by the name of Diego, a girl by the name of Gabby, a girl by the name of a dude by the name of Toby, and another dude by the name of Renee. And what they're gonna do, the plan is to introduce Cuffy to this Mexican source of supply and arrest Cuff. They're using both Tammy Cowins, who is CS1, to handle Cuffy, and CS2 is handling Diego, who Toby, Renee, and Gabby are affiliated with. And CS1 and Tammy Cowins and CS2 are meeting together by themselves and with the Mexican cartel members I just named, and Tammy Cowins is also in touch with Cuff. So, when they make a bust, they bust these dudes, right? They bust these dudes. For something like $800,000, right? So they bust Diego, Toby. They seize $240,000, $280,000, and $330,000, which is roughly about $850,000. Tammy Cowins gets an award for $80,750, and CS2 gets an award for the same amount. Now, what Humphrey is trying to establish is that in order to make this bust, they had to apply for a Title III wiretap. And one of Keith Cromer's subordinates, an agent that worked for him, Agent Swoop, there were two agents, Mara Hewitt and I think Cloninger, right? Mara Hewitt, Tyler Hooks, and Mara Hewitt were the DEA agents in Atlanta that signed off on this affidavit, which was prepared by Agent Swoop, right? DEA agent Tyler Hooks, DEA agent Mara Hewitt, and Swoop, who prepared the affidavit, Title III affidavit, application for Title III wiretaps, all three of them say Tammy Cowins had nothing to do with this wiretap application. And what they're basically saying is that she shouldn't have gotten a reward. And this is what Humphrey is running down on Keith Cromer about on the stand. And Keith Cromer on the stand says, you're right. Tammy Cowins had nothing to do with the application for the Title III wiretaps. So Tyler Hooks, Mara Hewitt, and Swoop are right, and she's not referenced in the application for the Title III wiretaps. But the Title III wiretaps is just for the wiretaps. It doesn't encapsulate the total investigation, of which Tammy Cowins was involved in the total investigation. She did meet with Diego, she did meet with Renee, she did meet with Gabby, she did meet with Toby. They all hung out together. Because she's not specifically referenced in the application, that doesn't mean she's not entitled to an award, because the seizures were made. And she was ready to bring Cuffy into that fold had we went along with that plan, which they didn't go through because DEA St. Louis took it over. In the application for the Title III wiretaps, Swoop references a CS1. This is specifically for the application for the Title III wiretaps. In that application for the Title III wiretaps, CS1 is really the CS2 we've all come to know and love. But just for this particular application, CS2 is referenced as CS1. It's not Tammy Cowins. So what the attorney Humphrey is trying to establish is that Keith Cromer, you put that CS1 in there, and that justifies Tammy getting the reward, even though she had nothing to do with the application for the Title III wiretaps. And he acknowledges, Keith Cromer acknowledges, no, that's not Tammy Cowins, that is CS2. And then he also points out to another part of the application for the wiretaps that says that this application for the Title III wiretaps does not capture the totality of the investigation, just the relevant information we need to get the wiretaps. And Keith Cromer brings that up, saying, you see, Tammy Cowins may not have had anything to do with getting the wiretap application, but in the overall scheme of things for the investigation, she's very much involved. Therefore, she is entitled to the $80,000, $750 wiretap, reward. Now, if you could remember when Jack Harvey was on the stand, Jack Harvey mentioned that this is around the time that Tammy Cowins calls him and tells him, I got $80,750 and I don't know for what. Now, this is also around the time, this happens in 2012, right? This particular wiretaps investigation, these seizures, this happens in 2012. Remember, she doesn't call Jack Harvey and say this to him until, like, I want to say it's either 2014 or 2015. I'm leaning toward 2015 because I know she reached out to Jack Harvey in February of 2013 when DEA St. Louis busted Cuffy and his people. And this is when she gets afraid because she gets found out and exposed. And then she also she calls Jack Harvey then, but she doesn't come clean. She's kind of like beating around the bush at this time. But in 2015, when she calls him back, then she comes out and says, "I got this $80,000, $80,750, and I don't know for what." Now, she got this money in 2012. But anyway. So that's what they're going through now. So Swoops, Special Agent Swoops, who prepares the affidavits, his job is just to prepare affidavits. Him, Mara Hewitt, and Tyler Hooks, who are task force officers or maybe agents, say that Tammy Cowins had nothing to do with this seizure, yet she got an award. So let's get into it. Hold on a second. All right, so I'm on page 89 of 192. Humphrey to Keith Cromer. Did you direct any of your subordinates to cross-reference a DEA 6 relating to a different confidential source in order to make sure that Tammy Cowins was paid? Keith Cromer, no sir. Humphrey, at any point did you direct any of your subordinates to create a DEA 6 that was a falsehood in order to make sure that Tammy Cowins got paid? Keith Cromer, no sir. Humphrey, at any point did any of your subordinates come to you and complain that the DEA 6 that was being submitted for payment to Tammy Cowins did not justify a payment to Tammy Cowins? Keith Cromer, did somebody come to me and say, no sir? Humphrey, having reviewed the DEA 6 forms related to the payments to Tammy Cowins, in your belief, were there ever any payments made to Tammy Cowins that were not justified? Keith Cromer, no sir. Humphrey, did any of your subordinates ever complain to you that there was a monthly payment system in effect to pay confidential sources? Keith Cromer, no sir. Have you heard from any other agents, whether they be in your task force or DEA Atlanta, who said that there is no such payment process for confidential source to receive monthly payments? Keith Cromer. The answer to that is no. And again, I have to say this, repeat this to you again. Before I implemented in doing this, I went and asked first, okay? That's the bottom line. I went and asked because I didn't know if you could do it or not. The suggestion I had, I thought about it, and I went in and asked. And after asking, I received permission to do it. Humphrey. And you received permission from Agent Murphy? Keith Cromer, yes. Who was my supervisor? Before I went in to ASAC Murphy at the time, I also spoke with another supervisor group in reference to paying confidential sources. And I also spoke to an additional person with DEA who we know, he explained that things such as making this, that does happen. So based upon that, I went and asked my supervisor if we could do it, and my supervisor said yes. And so the payments began. And they didn't begin with Tammy Cowins. They began with another individual first, then CS2, then Tammy Cowins. So Tammy Cowins was the third confidential source, according to Keith Cromer, to get on this monthly payment. Humphrey, after this process was approved by your supervisor, did you go and discuss the process with your subordinates in Task Force Group 2? Yes, sir. Humphrey, what is a DEA Form 499? Keith Cromer, It's a request for payment for an award. The discussion, Keith Cromer, the discussion surrounding paying the award happened before I met with the group. And we went through, at a period of time in the spring of 2012, we went through a string of seizures, large seizures of both money. And so with that, we decided from those seizures that we will pay confidential sources from those seizures. And it goes back to, and I hate to keep repeating this, but I have to. In March of 2012, when I brought Tammy Cowins and CS2 together to work, that's where their work, where everything got started as far as cooperating and working together. And so with that, during that meeting, and subsequent from there, Tammy Cowins and Tammy Cowins told CS2 about the drug trafficking activity of Cuffy and his associates. It didn't have anything to do with Fidel, only with Cuffy and his associates. I signed off on the paperwork, and the approval process happens beyond me. I didn't approve anything. I forwarded the paperwork, I agreed with it, and the paperwork was forwarded, so I didn't approve it. This is page 92 of 192. Tammy Cowins was working, hold on, Humphrey. In this application for an award, it had nothing to do with Cuffy or Fidel Suarez, did it? Yes, it had to do with Tammy Cowins' cooperation in collaboration with CS2. Humphrey. So Tammy Cowins in this statement provided agents with telephone numbers and overhear conversations between targets of this investigation. Agents have subsequently written for and received approval for the interception of target telephones to include the telephone that led to the seizure of $337,000. Keith Cromer, yes sir. Humphrey, and that work was done by Tammy Cowins? Keith Cromer. Tammy Cowins working with CS2. And I have to explain this so you can bring it in total so you'll know. What happened from the point when Tammy Cowins and CS2 agreed to work together, remember what I told you. Tammy Cowins was going to introduce Cuffy to the Mexican source of supply. CS2 was going to do that, but had Tammy Cowins around so that the Mexicans we were targeting at the time, the Mexican national we were targeting at the time, would be comfortable seeing Tammy Cowins around. One of the things that happened, what we were doing, is Tammy Cowins was making phone calls based upon pen registers and toll analysis that we were doing. Those phones appeared and we didn't know who they were. She was making the calls to see if it's a male, female, black, white, Hispanic. Also from that, and it's significantly later, one of the people they came up with was a female named Gabby. That person had continued through until they got arrested, was one of the people who worked for in the collection of drug proceeds. So she was familiar with the people who the money came from. People associated with Gabby and Diego, which was Renee. I don't know Renee's last name, but it was his people, the people who worked for him, where the money got seized from. So what we told them is that, hey, if something comes up where we can pay you money, we can pay you an award if we seize money, we'll do that. The first person who got an award from this was CS2 first, and it was for an additional amount. And the second one was this right here for Tammy Cowins. So we had already discussed and talked about paying them an award based upon if we get seizures of money. So that's what happened, and so we put it in for them. CS2, Keith Cromer. CS2 and Tammy Cowins were working together at that point. Again, in March of 2012, this happened. The seizures happened in May of 2012. Tammy Cowins and CS2 began working together in March of 2012. I believe, if it's not mistaken, the seizure happened in May of 2012. And we had got them both together and discussed it, and they agreed to start working together on an overlap of targets. Because we were going to, again, like I said, is make Cuffy just a customer of Renee, Diego, and Toby. That's all we wanted to do. And the plan was already in works right there. So when this came up, we paid them. And I gave you and I told you on October 21st the same thing. There's another individual who got paid the same way. He didn't start the investigation, but he was a part of it in the investigation. We seized $4 million and we gave him almost $300,000. Smoky in here. He wasn't directly involved with the seizure of that money, but he was a part of the overall investigation itself. And there's no issue with that right there. So now they're talking about the Title III wiretaps and everything I mentioned. But another interesting point to this is that the award, the DEA 499 to pay the award to Tammy Cowins, gets signed and submitted on August the 5th, 2012. And remember, that's a key date because that's the date that is in the motion to suppress the Title III wiretaps. I think that one is out of St. Louis, and this is the one where Tammy, Big Meech tells Tammy to put Diego in touch with Cuffy, and Diego was calling Tammy over and over again, "Where's Cuffy? Where's Cuffy? I got a truck up there." Remember that part? This is going way back. This award for Tammy Cowins is put in on the same day. Check this part out. Keith Cromer. We had a group meeting. After we do post debriefings of every enforcement activity, we have to go over everything we did to include once the money was seized, processed, and there was a check, and you had to do a standard seizure form, an SSF. Once that is done, the next thing we came in and we had a discussion about, because we had a seizure of like 240,000, 280,000, and right behind it, we had a $330,000 seizure. This is page 100 of 192. And what we had a discussion in the group as far as, hey, while we have this, we just seized $5 million or $8 million the year before, and we dispersed that money among other agencies, local agencies in the group. So nobody was pressed for money for their agency at the time. So I said, hey, we had a discussion, let's take care of the informants, the cooperators. So that's what we did. You know, so, and then, you know, this is just going into the Title III wiretaps and how Tammy Cowins was not in the application. You know, and how in the application for the Title III wiretaps signed by Agent Hooks and Swoop and Hewitt, they all say Tammy Cowins had nothing to do with it, yet she got an award. So that's pretty much it. So I'll probably do another video tomorrow I'm gonna go ahead and get this over with. Yeah. Tammy Cowins got an award on August 5th, 2012. Wow, that was the same day. That's an infamous date, because that's where Tammy Cowins says that. See, that's where the lies come in, because that's the date where Tammy Cowins says that she put Keith Cromer on a three-way. Then she says he was there in her apartment because she was cooking spaghetti. It was a Sunday. That ended up being a lie because Keith Cromer was out of town in South Carolina at a family reunion. But it's crazy how that date is the same date that she's put in for an award. I don't know. We're going to keep going. Peace.